Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to start out with Joseph Campanella, who died recently at the age of 93, veteran character actor. He was on television for almost the whole history of television for over 50 years, but almost never in a starring role. He had a brief co-star role in Mannix. We've done the Mike Connors podcast and once or twice else, but otherwise he was basically a supporting actor, but a really good one. You'd know him when you see him. He was a nice Sicilian boy from New York City. He was in the Navy in World War II, one of the youngest skippers in the Navy, by the way. One of the things I like about him is despite his Italian heritage, he almost never played Italian characters. He has a role in Roger Corman's St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where he plays Albert Weinshank. In fact, when I went back to look at the movie, virtually every Italian character in the movie was played by a non-Italian. I wonder if Roger Corman was just having a goof on that, or that was just a coincidence. I mean, Jason Robards as Capone and Harold J. Stone as Frank Nitti. I don't know if it's a coincidence. Anyway, back to Joseph Campanella. One of his early roles was in The Naked City, and here he is playing a doctor, and I was really impressed because he got all the medical terminology right. I have to tell you, that's pretty rare even today.
Doctor, I wonder if you have any of the stuff around here. Can I smell it?
It's odorless also, I wouldn't advise it.
How fast does it work?
There's no odor or initial irritation to warn a person. And liquid or vapor, either way, it's very lethal.
Well, how fast does it work?
The respiratory tract mainly, nose, throat, larynx, trachea, after 6 to 8 hours, depending on length of exposure, pulmonary edema sets in. Then,
Just a minute, Doctor. I wonder if you could be a little more specific in layman's terms. So that'll help us to know what we're looking for. For instance, what symptoms will you be looking for in those students?
well, first the eyes, tearing, photophobia, light sensitivity, followed by impairment of vision. Next stage, shortness of breath, shrill, harsh breathing when it hits this area, then severe coughing accompanied by extreme pain. That would usually come around 6 hours after exposure. After that,
Well, what about treatment, antidote?
as far as antidotes, none is known.
None.
Beyond a certain point of exposure, there's no hope. Up to a certain point, we can treat each symptom locally and get some success.
Now, wait a minute, Doc. I don't mean to imply anything about your medical experience, but are you sure there's no antidote?
Quite all right. When the registrar phoned us, I started checking the German medical journals.
Why the German?
Well, they developed it into a military poison gas known as Die Stoff. But they don't give an antidote.
You know, there are 8 million stories in The Naked City, and Joseph Campanella's was an interesting one. We're going to move on to our feature, Bernard Lewis, who died recently at the age of 101, a couple of days short of his 102nd birthday, and he was the world's leading Middle Eastern scholar. He was a professor emeritus at Princeton University, and he wrote extensively about Islam in the West and the history of the Ottoman Empire. Everybody didn't like his scholarship, and a lot of people didn't agree with him. Nobody couldn't argue that he was absolutely a brilliant man and a great writer. Here's the Weekly Standard on Bernard Lewis. Bernard Lewis was born in northeast London to middle-class Jewish parents in 1916. He began teaching as an assistant lecturer, which he referred to as the lowest form of human life in British universities, in Islamic history at the School of Oriental and African Studies in 1938. 2 years later, Lewis served in the British Army during World War II. After the war, he returned to his teaching post and at 33 became the chair of the history of the Near and Middle East at the University of London. There he taught for several decades. His teaching continued in the United States at Princeton University, where he became a professor in 1974. Lewis published more than 30 books, both scholarly and popular, about Islam and the Middle East. He was distinguished too for his essays before and after 9/11, the event that, as he thought, made him famous. It certainly armed his critics, and many accumulated over the decades, with a renewed passion. His essay, The Return of Islam, written for commentary in 1976, long before Samuel Huntington's more famous 1993 essay and follow-up book on the Clash of Civilizations, predicted a fractious Middle East dominated by competing Islamic nationalisms infused with Islamist fervor. As the nationalist movement has become genuinely popular, Lewis wrote, so it has become less national and more religious. In other words, less Arab and more Islamic. In moments of crisis, and these have been many in recent decades, it is the instinctive communal loyalty which outweighs all others. Lewis's exegesis of the Middle East and Islam in The Emergence of Modern Turkey, What Went Wrong, and Islam in the West, among many others, cultivated a fuller and realistic understanding of the region and the religion, and generated necessary debates about the role of the West in the Middle East. Of the choices before us in the Middle East, he famously said, either we bring them freedom or they destroy us. In 1990, Lewis was honored by the National Endowment for the Humanities and gave its annual Jefferson Lecture. In it, he reflected on the American founding and the nature of religion and politics within Islam. Islam, like other religions, he said, has also known periods when it inspired in some of its followers a mood of hatred and violence. It is our misfortune that we have to confront part, though by no means all or even most, of the Muslim world while it is going through such a period, and when much, though again not all, of that hatred is directed against us. In the tumult of the Middle East, he saw what others would not or could not. Late in his century-long life, he was known by those close to him to favor the French aphorism, tout passe, tout casse, tout lasse. Everything passes, everything perishes, everything vanishes. A bracing reminder that our civilization will not last forever and that we had better preserve it while we can. Bernard Lewis aided us in that work. His memory is a blessing. Here, in an interview later in life, he talks about the relationship between Islam and the West in the last half century.
Well, this is a debate which has been going on in the Muslim world for a very long time now. I mean, they have been aware of the changing relationship between Islam and, to put it in their terms, between Islam and Christendom. They have been aware of this, they have been arguing about it since, one might even say, the debate began something like 300 years ago with the first major Ottoman military defeats. And now it is an agonized question all over the Islamic world. Why is it that we are falling behind and they are advancing? And now it's becoming even worse. In the past, they had to struggle with the disagreeable fact that the industrial West, Europe and America, outpaced them, outperformed them. Now they have to face the fact that even places like Korea, which half a century ago were far behind them in every respect, are now far ahead of them. So clearly there is something radically wrong in their society. Of this, they are very well aware. Remember, we are not dealing with primitives. We're dealing with an old civilization with long traditions, a very keen sense of history. Now, when you become aware that something is wrong, there are two ways you can approach it. You can ask, what did we do wrong? In which case, the next question is, how do we put it right? What are they doing right? What is there that we might adopt or imitate? That is the way which has been followed by many in the Muslim world. The other way is to say, who did this to us? And this leads you into a twilight world of paranoia and conspiracy theories. And that, of course, is the response of many others. Now, broadly speaking, the answers fall into two categories. There are the ones who say, what is wrong is insufficient modernization. We have not kept up with the modern world. We have allowed others to outpace us, and the remedy is to catch up with them. This was the argument of Kemal Atatürk, for example,
right, in Turkey,
the founder of the Turkish Republic, a great apostle of modernization. He argued once, he said it's idle to talk of this civilization or that civilization or meetings between civilizations. He said at any time in human history, there is one civilization that is modern. There is modernity. He said there is one civilization at the time that is modern civilization. The others are dead or dying. We have to become part of that modern civilization or we fall behind. That is one approach, and in various forms one finds it also elsewhere. The other is to say, no, what is wrong is too much modernization, meaning too much imitation of the ways of the West, too much imitation of Western institutions, Western mores, and so on. For these people, the West is degenerate, corrupt, immoral, and its influence can only be bad.
Well, we're going to move on to another centenarian now. That's two centenarians in a row. Patricia Morrison, who died recently at the age of 103. She was a beautiful actress, and her name is probably not as well known as it should be. Long dark hair, beautiful blue eyes. She started out in the movies in 1939 at Paramount, and she had a very, very nice voice, and the problem is Paramount didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't really in any movies of great note, except Dressed to Kill, opposite Basil Rathbone, a Sherlock Holmes movie. She was going to get into television when she was released by Paramount in 1947, but she took a detour and tried out for the role of Lily Vanessy in Kiss Me Kate, the Cole Porter musical that was opening on Broadway, and she won the role. That's right, she was the first Kate on Broadway. And she went on to do a lot more Broadway, including The King and I, where she took over for Gertrude Lawrence opposite Yul Brynner. She didn't do that much television after that. In the 50s, they used to put Broadway shows on television, and here she is in the Hallmark Hall of Fame doing a reprise of Kiss Me Kate with her male co-star Alfred Drake. This was highbrow television at the time, in the 50s, when people said there was no highbrow television, and you can tell what a nice voice she had.
Hallmark card. When you care enough to send the very best. Presents Alfred Drake and Patricia Morrison in Kiss Me Kate by Sam and Bella Spiewak. Music and lyrics by Cole Porter on the Hallmark Hall of Fame.
Wunderbar, wunderbar, there's a favorite star above. What a bright shining star, like a light, it's
Well, I said Patricia Morrison didn't do much television. That's not strictly true. Her last screen appearance was on an episode of Cheers in 1989, but her greatest screen appearance was in Have Gun Will Travel in 1958. Gotta have our Have Gun Will Travel connection. It was an episode called The Moor's Revenge, one of the best of the series. It's the story of a thespian couple, man and wife, who want to bring Shakespeare, specifically Othello, to a cow town, specifically San Diego, against Paladin's advice. It is a great episode. Patricia Morrison, of course, is Desdemona. And guess who her Othello is? Vincent Price. They're going to put this on in a little saloon, and guess who the proprietor of the saloon is? Maury Amsterdam, a couple of years before he was writer Buddy Sorrell for Dick Van Dyke. Here's a little bit of it.
Watch the little lady shake. That's me as Cleopatra. And she doesn't even look like Cleopatra.
Charlie Matthews, king of the comics.
Rosalind, oh, desecrated. Charles, what have they done to me?
King of the comics.
Charles, we'll be playing in a saloon. This isn't a theater, it's a saloon.
Paladin, do something, will you? Do something about that.
Well, I don't know. Matthew seems to be doing all right by himself.
Oh no, he ain't. Look at the look on Jackson's face. Bellingham. Which one of you is Lucian Bellingham? Point out that scum to me, and with these hands I'll kill him. Look at that.
The next one I'll put between your teeth.
Please, don't you, please.
All right, if you say so.
But don't let that give you any ideas. Victoria, come. And take your hand off of her.
Oh, Mr. Paladin.
Oh, so you came after all.
Keep moving. Go to the hotel.
Go to the hotel. Are you mad? Victoria and I are leaving this Sodom and Gomorrah forthwith.
And our advice to you is, well, what in the world? Charles, he's carrying a pistol.
Yes.
And those clothes. Oh, I know. You're in costume for the roundup.
Get her out of here. Go to the hotel.
Move!
What?
Well, I've never been so
Really?
short into that.
More great 50s television, by the way. You get an idea of what Patricia Morrison could have done if she'd had more roles on television and in the movies. Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. We're going to close with a brief mention of Reggie Lucas, who died recently at the age of 65. Played for a while with Miles Davis. And he was a songwriter and producer. Produced for Madonna, and he wrote a couple of well-known songs, including this one for Stephanie Mills.
I never knew love like this before. Now I'm lonely nevermore. Since you came into my life, you are my love like the sun, and I'll never let you go.
He won a Grammy for that, and he reworked it a couple years later for Madonna. I'm not a big Madonna fan, but this one's not a bad song, so we'll close with it.
Just